Imposter syndrome is a syndrome well described over the last 50 years where, I feel as though I have everyone fooled. I feel as though I have everyone completely, um, you know, I've deceived everyone. And I'm receiving benefits and receiving advantages, knowing that I'm not as capable or as great or as intelligent or as creative as people give me credit for being. And so any minute now, I have this fear, perhaps I even have terror, that somebody's going to expose me and say, oh, I know you. You're just, Persephone because I remember you from kindergarten, that insecure girl. And how did you end up becoming the executive vice president of our company? We have this fear that we're going to be exposed. Imposter syndrome. So let me tell you my own story about it. When I was a young man, I was being trained by my master, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And a young American, I was really a boy, not yet 20. And I was surrounded by a lot of the people that Maharishi had handpicked to be around him, to be the recipients of his unfolding of the body of knowledge, which really is the body of knowledge of the Vedic worldview. And many of these people were beautifully spoken academics, people with university degrees, which I didn't possess at the time, people who had had exposure to very refined communication and language techniques. And interestingly, for an American, many of them were British. And I think Americans always have a bit of an inferiority complex compared with the British when it comes to mastery of the English language. And one day, over after lunch, one of the British women, who was probably 12 or more years my senior, took me aside. Helen was her name. And Helen said to me, Thom, there are certain words that you have used just in conversation over lunch and things that it turns out that I can tell that you don't actually know the proper meaning of the words that you've been using. And I know you want to be a great teacher of Maharishi's knowledge. And, I think I was an 18-year-old, maybe you'd like, and she was a barrister. A barrister in England means somebody who is authorized to perform litigation work in a courtroom. And you're quite a famous barrister. And she, said, these are the words, and, I'm kindly telling you because I want you to be the best. But instead of taking it as a kind lesson being given by an elder mentor, somehow I construed it all to be shameful, and I was mortified. And I remember very well standing in the lecture hall. When Maharishi would enter the room, everybody would stand. And then he would walk through an aisle of standing people. I was one of them. And I must have been looking a little uncharacteristically lackluster, because as he walked past me, he said the word, "What?" with a question mark. And I said, "Oh, nothing." And he said, "No, not nothing. Come." That's the way he talked. And so I followed him back to his private meeting room. And he said, "Tell me what it is." And I told him the whole story about my conversation with Helen. He said, are you feeling a little like maybe you got here, I've handpicked all these people to be around me and I'm training them. And somehow maybe you sort of managed to pull the wool over my eyes, or maybe you fooled everyone who's here. I said, yeah, I actually, I do feel like that. And this was a classic Maharishi trap. He'd backed me into a corner then, and he said, oh, so I'm a fool. I said, no, I didn't say you were a fool, Maharishi. He goes, no, I asked you if you fooled everyone, and you said yes. And that means also me, even though I handpicked you to be here. So I am a fool. And I said, I didn't mean that. And he held his hand up and he said, don't talk. And he said, so, arrogance. The problem is your arrogance. And I said, arrogance? I don't. He goes, do you know the meaning of the word arrogance? I said, I think I know, but maybe you're going to tell me something else. He said, arrogance, it means you hold an opinion about yourself that no one else holds. Doesn't matter if it's higher or lower. You think everyone else has the wrong idea about you, and only you have the right idea. It's arrogance. He said, so what to do about this arrogance? He said, you'll take some of these papers, and he gave me about 50 sheets of paper. There were 40 people there. And he said, take these and a pen and go and visit each person one by one who's here. And tell them that Maharishi said, they have to candidly write about you, whatever they think about you, top of the mind, whatever they think. And then when you've done all the polling, he called it polling, when you do all the polling, bring it back here and we'll read it. Go. And I had to go right away. And I had to submit to this thing of subjecting myself to people saying, excuse me, but Maharishi wants you to write whatever's top of your mind, whatever you think about me. And on its own, it was an act. It required an act of humility just to even do it. And I had to submit to that. Because after all, I was being treated for being arrogant, having an opinion about myself, that I thought everyone else had the wrong opinion and I was the only one with the right opinion. So I got all those things, papers, and I brought them back. He said, read it out. Then I had to read out everything that people wrote. And I have to say, with humility, that everyone wrote fabulous things about me. Even though they were asked to write candidly, there wasn't anything negative about me. The only one exception was from Helen, who wrote, after saying some praiseworthy things about me, she wrote, he thinks too little of himself. And so I had to read all that to him, and I did. It took about half an hour. At the end of that time, he said, see, this is what everyone actually thinks about you, and as opposed to this, you have another opinion. It's a form of arrogance. And what's the treatment going to be for this arrogance? He said, right away, you let go of your sense of having a right to think about yourself, to have an opinion about yourself. Just let go of the whole thing. Every time you think to yourself, I wonder what somebody thinks, just stop and suspend all of that. I'm telling you, as a treatment for you, this is the only one thing that's going to work. You have to let go of that sense of, what does everyone think about me? Because the fact is, you wouldn't be in the position you're in here, he said, if everyone didn't think the best about you. You couldn't possibly be here. And so you need to let go of all of this. You need to let the collective's impression of you be a natural guide for you, because you're well thought of. And I did that. It took me about 6 months to learn a new habit. And the new habit was, every time I went to think, oh, I wonder what so-and-so, or I wonder what so-and-so think, or, I wonder if I just let go of that and be back in the present moment. And he said, you have to think to yourself, what's the next right thing to be doing? Every time you start thinking about, oh, what do people think about me? You just think next. And when you think next like that, it means it's shorthand for what's the next right thing to be doing. And then you engage in that. Whatever the next right thing to be doing is, you do that. Instead of sitting around ruminating, what does everybody think about me and all that. It worked for me. It'll work for you. So listen carefully to what I've just said and start practicing that. All this, what does everyone think about me, all that business. Be in the present moment. Consider what is the next right thing to be done and do that. And let go of all of this, trying to figure out what everybody thinks about you. And we don't live our lives by all of these imagined opinions of other people. Don't live our lives by that. We live our lives by what's the next thing that needs to be done. Let me be the agent of evolution. What's the next best thing that needs to be done? And we do that thing. Then we'll come out of this thing.